This is the UK Brand Show with Penny Williams and Mark Challoner.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hi, Pen.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
Very good, are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good.
I'm quite looking forward to autumn. It's a good time of year.
You're wishing your life away saying that. There's still sunshine to be had.
Well, only a little bit. It's funny enough, I always say when we do the Leeds Castle concert, every year that's when summer starts because it's always the beginning of July and June always rains. And here we are again. We had to move the concert to September and the sun's coming out.
And, well, speaking of which, that's what you've been up to since we've last spoken, isn't it? Because you've been organising a big show.
I have indeed. I'm part of the team that puts on the concert. We had to move the event from the 10th of July to the 4th of September, which was quite a big risk. But we had a fantastic audience and it was a really good night, actually. One of the best, I think.
So the people that don't know what it is, just to explain what it is. It's in Leeds in Kent, not Leeds in Yorkshire.
It is, yes. So Leeds Castle down in Kent. It's a sort of prom evening. It's been running for over 43 years. And it's the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra with soloists and other performers as well. Fireworks and a Spitfire flyover, which makes me go goosebumpy every year.
Well, before you go any further, I've got a little video to show people of what it actually looks like. So we're going to show this. This is, I know the video is not ready yet for this year, is it? Because it's only just been done. But we've got the last time we did it, because you didn't do it last year because of COVID.
That's
but we've got a little video to show people from the 2009 event. So let me just share my screen if I can, like so. And then we can do this. Wow.
We certainly know how to put on a firework display.
Wow. Wow.
The artillery gun.
Wow. That was amazing.
Yeah, there's artillery guns at the end that blast on the left-hand side of the screen there. So
how many people go to this?
Well, this year we only had about 8,000, but usually it's 12 to 14. But some people rolled their tickets over to 2022.
Right.
Obviously changing the date. Some people were on holiday, etc., etc. So yeah, we were a little bit down on numbers, but it didn't make any difference. It was a great atmosphere, and it was a superb night.
Well, it's nice time because we're today talking about how we do put on a successful event, not necessarily outdoors, but in your case, especially outdoors, but just events generally. So people who are in the field of putting on an event for people, how do we actually do that, and how we actually create something which is going to be memorable and great experience for people. So I had something I've done which was a sort of a top 10 list, if you like, of and we won't go through all 10 today, but we got some of the key points of what it takes to organize a successful event. And maybe you could run through, in your experience, what you do with the outdoor shows when it's particularly outdoors, of course, rather than just an internal conference or whatever. So, organizing an event, I guess it's certainly not a simple task, as you'll be well testifying. But we can identify some things, I think, which help things go well. And the first one, and tell me whether this is your first thing, is really defining the purpose and the format of the event. Because it seems pretty obvious, but it's worth having a really critical approach to it. Formulate what your goal is as specifically as possible, and do you want to convey, for example, is it knowledge to participants, or express gratitude, or just entertain people like you do?
Yeah.
Is it raising funds for projects? What's it all about? What's the format of the event? And that will depend, I guess, on the format. Will depend on what the concept is, and the timing, and the duration, and what the layout of the place is, what catering you can do, etc., etc. If it's an outdoor event, and I guess what's happened, I think, with Zoom coming into the fore in the past year or two with COVID, it's forced us to think differently about things as well.
Yeah.
In terms of not the traditional formats necessarily. They call it unconferencing. Taking, maybe some people use TED formats, or they use thematic brunches if it's an indoor thing, or online events, or open air events as you've got. There's lots of different wins, isn't it? What can count as a format helps achieve the goal of the event.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that COVID has changed. We're talking about hybrid events, hybrid working practices. Life has changed. And whilst a lot of people are going back into the offices, I still think it's left us with challenges when you're putting on an event. And I suppose you still come back to a lot of the basics that we follow for marketing, which is, why are you doing it? What's the outcome you want? And I always talk about customer journeys, and I think that's really important for event goers. How do they find you? How do they, if they need to purchase a ticket, how's that process?
Yeah. How do you do that in yours?
So it's all online. And
do you have a formula of, like, when we're starting the show, in planning the show, this is the list of things we would tick off to do before we can go to stage 2 or whatever?
No, I suppose we've been doing it for many years, and you've got a team. So I primarily do the marketing. I work for Heritage Events, who plan the event. And this year, obviously, it's been hugely challenging. And I would say, this is going to go forwards as well, that suppliers have fallen out of the market during the COVID period, because they've either gone bust, or they've put their kit somewhere else. Because, for instance, toilets, there's a national shortage of outdoor event toilets. That's because building sites need more to keep people safe in terms of COVID. Vaccine stations, testing stations have all required additional toilets.
I remember. Do you remember the Olympics in 2012? They had to cancel Glastonbury that year because they couldn't get enough toilets for the event because of all these needed at the Olympics.
So the same thing has happened again. Marquee companies are, a lot of those sadly went bust during this time. Staging, lighting, all of that. It's more expensive and there's less of it. So in terms of planning an event, actually, whether it's indoors or outdoors, the game has changed, and we do need to think far more in advance.
But I think that's part of the thing. But the second point I was going to make about paying attention to the planning bit as well, isn't it? And you've been doing yours for years, so you've got a fair idea of what's coming up. But if you're getting into the space, or you're planning something which you don't do, year in, year out, then you need to get a list of all the main tasks and then flesh them out as much detail as possible. With specific steps that must be completed.
We do it 12 months. So as soon as we come out of the one event, now this year, we've only got 9 months to next year. So already we're doing those things that we always do. I suppose I'm a bit embarrassed, so I don't exactly have a plan. It's just we know what we need to do.
and that feeds into the thing about, when you're planning your budget for whatever the event is, you've got to allow for unforeseen events, unforeseen situations, like the toilet situation there. I'm thinking, in your case, what happened? What would have happened? What would be your plan B? So what would have happened if it's really, really terrible? It started monsoon or something and you couldn't run it. Is there a plan B, or you just have to cancel it?
Yeah, I mean, we have had severe rain in 2011. It's all about making sure people are safe. So yeah, I think we all get to you can get to that point where you have to decide, yeah, we've got to close the event. It's rare. I mean, I can't remember the last time an event had to do that. But you should have sufficient things in place to ensure that, you know, there's no crushing of crowds, that, you know, people have got things. I mean, you've got the same issue if it gets very hot. You need to make sure you've got free water for everybody, that you're monitoring, that, you know, there's no one that's really suffering and you're not aware of it. So you've got a huge responsibility when you put on an event to ensure that, you know, everyone that's there is safe.
Yeah. And I guess you know, the devil's in the detail, isn't it? Really, as well. You know, you want to sort of pleasantly surprise everyone when they come, have a bit of exceed the expectations. Some things which they don't expect to go, wow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got a budget to keep to, and you know, and that's subject in your case, you've got a COVID situation that's just coming out of, so you're not going to have as many people there, so you've got less revenue. So it's a fine balance, isn't it? But all these things need consideration.
Yeah. There's you always have to plan for the unexpected. I mean, I think it's a lot of risk assessments are done for everything I'm involved in.
I'm relating that to like Zoom meetings. So I'm this very week, last week, this week, and next week, I'm running a masterclass on advertising for media, a global thing. So I did the first one last week, and this week we've got speakers from all over the world. So I'm moderating the whole thing, chairing it, and I've got speakers from all over the world talking about topics on media advertising now, post-pandemic. How do you beat Google at its own game, and content categories and stuff like this. And we've got people who are paying to be there online, so you've got to give them a good experience, because you know, it's not just even a free webinar; it's a paid-for event. So again, you've got to think these things through, and so we try and give as little risk as possible to it. So this afternoon, later today, I've got a rehearsal with those speakers. I've got two rehearsals today, one later this afternoon, which is for the 2 European speakers I've got this week. And then I've got one 11 o'clock tonight to cope with the Australian speaker I've got from Rupert Murdoch's organisation. But we'll get their deck up on the screen in the Zoom environment. We'll look at it. We'll see what it looks like, see if they've got any fancy builds, which may not translate in Zoom, because sometimes Zoom's a strange beast. And it can just do things you're not expecting. I've been doing it for the webinar things for over 2 years now, and it can do some strange things. We don't get too technical with our stuff, but when you've got constantly putting presentations up on the screen and people from different countries dialing in, it can all cause all sorts of mayhem. And people's Wi-Fi is not being very good, or things like this. So you've got to plan for it. What happens if? And that devil is in the detail for sure. So we try and reduce the amount of risk as much as possible. Do the tech rehearsals, get the things on screen, make sure the speakers know exactly the format of what's going to happen on the day, and hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully the technology doesn't let you down.
And the same happens in the physical. That we do tabletop run-throughs of situations prior to the event, so that all the staff that are managing different areas know what to do, and radios and code words, and so but I can see how that's how life's changed, isn't it? That you now need to do the same with the technology, because the technology can almost be just as unreliable or more risk of something going wrong as the sort of physical events.
And I guess part of the solution to all of that as well is, if you've got a team of people, however big or small, whoever's running the event with you, make sure they all know what their responsibilities are, and just empower them to go off and do it, and make sure it all happens.
Yeah.
It's just difficult otherwise if no one's really too sure, well, I should be doing that, or should I be over there at the gate, or blah, blah, blah.
Communication and protocols.
Yeah. And speaking of communication, that was the next point. So this golden old age rule of promotion, which I grew up with, which is 3 points. tell them what you're going to give them it, and then tell them what you've just given them. And the tell them what you're about to give them still applies to this day, as in, you know, tell your audience about the event. And it sounds like a stupid thing. Of course you do that. But some people just don't grasp the obvious sometimes. And they think it's a week before, oh, we better promote it. Well, make sure you said there, you do a year in advance, don't you?
Yeah. And we capture a lot of photos and videos. You know, this year, because the Spitfire was going to have to fly earlier than usual in the programme because it was getting dark. And I don't know if you know, Spitfires, because of their age, have to be on the ground by the time it's dark.
Right.
So we had to...
Now you've said it, it's not a surprise, I guess, but I didn't know that, no.
So we did a video of the pilot this year and put that up on the screen so that people could connect perhaps with who was flying over.
Good idea,
because it was slightly earlier in the programme, and in all honesty, people weren't quite so drunk. So it just gave them that connection with him, which we then used on social media. So we, as you say, we put it out there saying the Spitfire were flying over and this is the pilot. We then put it on the big screen just before he flew, and then we'll run it again on social media afterwards. So it's exactly that, you know, selling the atmosphere actually through video. Yeah,
and all that needs planning, and all that needs a time scale on it. You know, you can't just go, oh, we better do some promotion for this thing. Or and the other thing, which at the end of the day, you run the event, and once it's over, the thing which I sort of always been taught about on running events, whatever they are, is paying attention to the service. So, you know, whether it's a conference where you've got participants and speakers and partners, sponsors and stuff, you know, trying to address any problems you think they're going to come across, or, you know, make them meet their expectations, and then again, try and exceed it if you can. The thing I was told once is that at the end of the day, people will remember not necessarily, you know, what people said from a stage. It's going to be more about how they were treated, what was the atmosphere like, and, you know, that's the sort of thing that lingers with them in their head.
Yeah.
How did you treat them?
Yeah. And how did you make them feel? I suppose it's the same thing, but that feeling, isn't it? That's why we do exit marketing, to promote that you can go online and buy tickets for next year, because if you're feeling fabulous about the event you've just been to, it's a great time to sell them on the following year.
And that leads on to the final point I had on it, which was asking for feedback. So not only giving people the chance to buy tickets online for next year, but also going to them and saying, what do you think of this year's? Did you like it? Are there any things we could improve? I've done that in my post emails to all the attendees for my masterclass this week, the advertising thing. Just sending everybody a note after the event to say, I hope you enjoyed it. Here are the speakers. Here's some links to stuff which is relevant to the speakers and the stuff you heard today. Here's all the decks. Here's the links to the presentations and the decks, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, though, what did you think? Could we have improved it? And put something in there which allows them a little survey, like a survey monkey thing or something, to say, yeah, I did enjoy that. Hated that moderator. It was rubbish, but, you know, all that sort of stuff. What do they think of it?
Well, I think we get a lot of our feedback from social media, both positive and negative, or tips for next year. So, you know, we respond to all of that and monitor it. So, and do a debrief, which I'm doing this afternoon, funnily enough.
Oh, good. Well, there you go. So, but I think overall, if you look at it in its entirety, the sort of helicopter view is, you know, when you're organising it, just don't be afraid, or don't not expect a surprise of some description.
Yeah, and risk assess.
Yeah, and the more you think about that, I think the more you brainstorm what could go wrong, and try and allow for all of that in case it does on the day. You know, it's amazing. It's incredible, isn't it? When I was saying about the webinars I've been doing for like 3 years for my news association, and sorry, I've got my earpiece here. With my news association, we do it for 3 years now. There's always something which you don't expect still.
Yeah.
After all this time, I still don't know. Doing them every week for 3 years, there's something different's gonna happen, and it's ironic, isn't it? That I won't name names, but I'll tell you who they were in a roundabout way. You can guess, I'm sure. So in the 2 years, this is a great one. In the 2 years, 3 years we've been doing the webinars, only twice have we've had a situation where the Wi-Fi in the person's office who's a guest, speaker or interviewee, has been terrible. It's been absolutely awful, and we've had to log them off and try and log them on.
Yes.
But those two companies happen to be two of the biggest media companies in the world.
No.
One of them's a big newspaper, happened to be based in New York,
Right.
and the other one happened to be a multi-channel
Media.
giant media company based in the UK. Who happens to be they do the news on television at 1 o'clock every day. Amazing, isn't it? Those two companies of all people you would never imagine.
No, that's just what happens. Technology can.
So I use that as an example with people to say, do you know what? I'm sorry you might find this a bit of an unusual thing. We're doing a tech rehearsal here, but if the likes of two big media companies like I've just sort of intimated can have a problem with them, anyone can. So don't assume anything is the point. So anyway, so we'll look forward to seeing the video of this year's concert.
Yeah, it should be ready soon. So I will. I'd very much like to share that with everybody. We'll do that maybe next time.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. So that's it. We will be back again soon.
Yeah, UK Brand Show website. You can listen to previous shows, ukbrandshow.co.uk. Contact us on Facebook and Twitter, and obviously our YouTube channel. Indeed.
And if you've got any questions for us, any suggestions or whatever, then email us, mark@theukbrandshow.co.uk. We'll see you all again soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye.